All right. Who remembers what we were talking about before Christmas? Joshua. And what did Joshua do the last time when we saw him? Who broke down the walls of Jericho? God. And what did Joshua and the people of Israel do? They walked around the city. And what did walking around the city mean? Well, they did the big scream, but what did it mean, walking around? Waiting for God to act. That's right. It's the same thing that we mean when we walk around things. When we walk around the font or the baptism, when we walk around the church in a procession, we're waiting for God to act. Because God acts and we respond. That's the Christian life. God comes to us and we stand up and meet him. Right? Now, after they took Jericho, the children of Israel went around and they took other cities until they had a place where they could settle down. And Joshua kept getting older, and at the end of his life, he called all the people together and he said, so, God promised to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all of the 12 sons of Jacob and all of their descendants that they would be given this good land to live in. And none of them saw it. Abraham died without seeing it. Isaac died without seeing it. Jacob died without seeing it. And all of his sons and grandsons and great-grandsons, they went into Egypt and they were slaves. But God has brought you out of Egypt and he has given you this good land. So, Joshua said, I'm dying. What are you going to do after I die? Are you going to stay faithful to God and worship only him and not worship the gods of the people who used to live here? Or are you going to be unfaithful like your fathers were, who died in the desert because they doubted me? And all the people said, we will follow God. And Joshua said, are you sure? And they said, we're sure. Do you think it worked out? Right, you know them. But those people who said they would be faithful, they were faithful. But there's a thing that Joshua said that it's important that all of us say, whether we're young or whether we're old. Joshua said, choose this day who you will serve. Will you serve the gods that your fathers served on the other side of the river? Or will you serve the gods of the people who lived here before, in whose land you now dwell? But I tell you what, whatever you do, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Now the point is, just because the people said that then didn't mean their children did the same thing. And just when their children did, didn't mean that their children did. Nobody gets to ride into the kingdom of God on the coattails of somebody else. God doesn't have grandchildren. What does that mean? So why are all of you here? You are here because your parents are Christians, right? That's awesome. That's wonderful. Does that mean you're going to be a Christian your whole life? Not necessarily. You should be. You're called to be. You're invited to be. But it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be. You have to make that choice yourselves. Every person who is called as a Christian has to say themselves, I don't know what you all are going to do, but as for me and my family, as long as I'm around, we're going to serve the Lord. And that's not a sermon I'm preaching to your parents or your grandparents. That's a sermon to you. You have to make that choice. You have to decide. You have to be faithful. There will be plenty of other things that you can choose, but you need to hold on to this because nobody else will do it for you. That's the message of Joshua when he dies. It's very, very easy to lose faith. It's very easy. It only takes a few decades, 20 years, and people can forget. You have to hold on to it. And if you have questions about that, you need to ask. Because I promise you there are answers. I promise. Every question you have, there is an answer to it. And a good answer. Because we're Orthodox. We're in the church that has good answers. No one will ever tell you, well, I won't say nobody will ever tell you, because sometimes people don't know the answer, so they say you just had to believe. But there's always an answer to be found. So if you find someone who says, I don't know the answer, or you just had to believe it, ask the priest, ask the bishop, ask somebody else. Because it's for you to hold on to the gift that God has given to you. Okay? That's about Joshua. Now we're going to leave the book of Joshua and we're going to go into the book of Judges, which is what happens when the children of Israel, what? Disobey and forget and run away from God, and then bad things happen and they come back. So we'll do that. Okay, well, now it's time for everybody to stand up and make some room and get in line, and we'll take communion.